Well, hey there. Welcome to the podcast, episode 59. This is the fourth part and the last part in my marriage series that I've been doing for the month of October. If you happen to miss parts 1, 2, and 3, don't worry. They're still there for you. You can go ahead and listen to them right now and then come back, or check this episode out and then go listen to episodes 56, 57, and 58. In episode 56, I talked about the dangers of comparison in your marriage. In episode 57, I talked about the 6 rules of arguing with your spouse. And then in 58, I talked about what happens when you disagree on parenting. Now, let's end on a high note. In this episode, I want to talk about date night. But before I do that, I want to tell you something so exciting. I get asked all the time, Jen, what is intuitive eating? Or I've heard of intuitive eating, but I don't really understand it or understand if it's something that I've been looking for. Well, I created something perfect for this. I thought, what if you just had a quick guide with the 4 first steps to intuitive eating? And it gave you that view you needed to make that decision. Like, is intuitive eating exactly what I've been looking for? Because I'm so sick of dieting. All you have to do is head to my website, www.healthcoach4life.com/first steps. I'll be sure to put it in the show notes for you, but go ahead, grab this guide, read these first steps, see what comes up for you. Notice if it becomes something as a trigger, like, oh my gosh, I can't give up dieting. It's all I've ever known. Or you're like, yes, finally, this is exactly what I've been looking for. All right, let's dive into this episode all about date night.
Welcome to the Health, Life, and More for Women podcast with certified life coach, mom of 4, and just all-around lover of all things 80s, your host, Jennifer D'Amato. Buckle in. Let's get started.
I'm wondering how many of you can remember dating your spouse. I'm talking about like those first dates. So our first dates, this was back in December of 1997. I was a freshman in college, and our first date was to see the movie Titanic. It was right before New Year's Eve, which technically was our second date. It was all kind of lumped into the same New Year's weekend. I'm calling it a weekend, but I don't even know if it fell on a weekend. It was just like 4 days. I went to New York and we went on our first date. So I had lived in Vermont. I was in college in Vermont. David actually was in college in Michigan. I'm from Massachusetts. He's from New York. We met through a mutual friend. We have such a great story. But you can listen to more about us on episodes 23 and 24, where my sweet hubby did come on the podcast. We answered all the submitted questions about marriage, parenting, having kids, our relationship, all those things. But anyway, we had our first date and we saw the movie Titanic. Oh, it was... Okay, it's so cheesy. It was so romantic because, of course, the movie was so romantic. We had actually not seen each other in person, though, since July 1997 when we met. Okay, remember, this is all before the technology we have. We wrote letters, sent cards, we emailed, we sent e-cards. Do you remember e-cards at all? We would, go into chat rooms and talk that way. And of course, we talked on the phone, very long, late night, sometimes very intoxicated conversations, mostly me. David's 4 years older. He did all the partying well beforehand. But anyway, we didn't see each other until December. And this first date, I mean, gosh, all the feels, all the feels. Our second date technically was going to Times Square for New Year's Eve. It was December 31st, 1997. Talk about starting off our relationship in the most amazing way. I stood on his feet for probably 2 hours of the, I don't know, what was it? Like 7 hours we stood outside in the freezing cold in New York City, Times Square. Crazy. And then I guess it was our second date, if you will, but really our third, was actually Valentine's Day. So February of 1998. And guess what? We saw Titanic again. Again. It was still in the theaters. I don't know if you guys remember that. But the reason we wanted to see it again, not was really because of the movie, but because recapturing what we felt on that first date. I wonder how far away from those feelings of those first dates you and your spouse have gotten. I know for us, we got so far away. I mean, miles and miles away from those feelings. And I'm not saying that in your marriage you need to be, head over heels, gaga, goosebumps or butterflies in your stomach for your spouse. But dang, we were nowhere close to those places, to that feeling. Now, part of that came from having kids. I mean, I'm not blaming the kids, but I'm kind of blaming the kids. We had kid after kid after kid after kid. People meet us and they're like, wow, your kids are really close in age. Yup. Those first ones are only 19 months apart. And then we didn't go more than really 2 years in between kids. We really wanted it that way, but it can take a toll on your dating relationship. We also had a no money, partly because we had so many kids all at once. I didn't work outside of the home, and it was hard for so long. We would do date nights at home, and this is even, partly Blockbuster time, partly post-Blockbuster. I miss Blockbuster, guys. We found a way to make it work. Sometimes that meant that we ate at 7 p.m., 7:30, whenever it was those little ones were going to sleep. Because I just wanted time with him. And he just wanted time with me, because when you have dinner as a family and you have little ones, toddlers, infants, it is not together time. It's not even close to a double date. You can't double date when your kids are little. It's not a date. We would just crave some of that alone time. It was few and far between, though. Affording a sitter, it was so tough. Well, as our daughters got older and they actually didn't need a babysitter anymore, we were finding it hard to even make an excuse not to go out. There was no excuse for us. So we set up a weekly date night. This is not a requirement and never should be in marriage. And if you listen to someone who tells you that you should be going on a weekly date night, you probably should click unfollow. I hate that word anyway, should. Stop shoulding on people. I hate it. Now, do I believe there is a great benefit to these date nights? Absolutely. But it might not be what you think. The real truth behind our weekly date nights was our friendship. It wasn't about going on a date and then coming home and, having all the feels and wild, crazy sex and all of that. It wasn't about that anymore. The truth is, the date nights that we were doing once a week were all about keeping our friendship strong. Life is tough. Life is so hard. And if anything has been proven in 2020 is that sometimes life just sucks. And how great is it that we spent all of 2019 going on weekly date nights to keep our friendship strong, because let me tell you, we have had to rely on that friendship so much this year. Spending every day in the same house, in the same space, 24/7 has been a challenge. No joke. We like each other a lot. We are friends. I mean, I love this man, but we drive each other crazy being together 24/7 when we're not on vacation. This is not a freaking vacation. When we go away together, we could be away together for 2 weeks straight, and it would not bother us at all. We would love it. Let me tell you, working from home together, giving up my office, sharing the same bathroom, then hanging out together all night, like we're not on vacation. And we have felt it. The love for one another was not feeling so strong, but we had our friendship to fall back on. The truth is, those date nights kept us connected as friends. You know, we kind of used to joke about how we would go on dates, come home, it would be later, we just kind of plop in bed and go to sleep. And we're like, isn't it weird that on date nights we don't feel as romantic after? Yet on other nights, we felt perfectly romantic and wonderful. It kind of became this joke between the two of us. I mean, maybe I thought it was a joke. My husband probably didn't find it as funny. But it's really what got me thinking, like, why is that? It's because our date nights were all about connecting in this friendship. I've needed David as my friend this entire year. I have needed him to go to be my bestie. I have needed him because I have been stressed out, sick and tired of what's been going on, whether it's the news or lockdowns, wearing masks, not wearing masks. All of it, not finding frickin' toilet paper for a long time. With a family of 6, guys, with a family of 6. I've needed his friendship. I've needed his friendship this year more than ever before. The truth is, date nights don't have to be about romance. They don't have to be about increasing your sex life. They really can be about strengthening and growing your friendship. I love that place that we were in back in 1997 and even 1998. We only saw each other every 8 to 10 weeks because of, living in 2 different states and being in college, and at least one of us, me, being broke as a joke. That place was wonderful. And let me tell you, date nights then, it was all about romance. I mean, yes, our friendship was building, but we were building a friendship on the phone. We were building a friendship through those letters. We were building our friendship through that communication. Going out on dates, it was all about romance. It was all about butterflies in the stomach and just gaga over each other. We've had to make that shift. We've had to make that shift mentally. That the date nights now, yes, there can be romance. That man still opens the door for me. He still will plan something. He took me out to my favorite movie of all time. It was playing at one of the small, movie theaters that serves food. It was Dirty Dancing. That man knows me. I was like, I felt so loved. It was actually so romantic. He took me out for a wonderful dinner. He took me out to my favorite movie. I mean, that component is still there. But the greatest truth about date nights, the one thing I want you to understand is that as you've been together for a long time, as you continue in your relationship, your friendship is what becomes so important. And let me tell you, when you are best friends with someone you also love deeply and find quite sexy, it strengthens everything about your relationship. You might be at a place right now where you can't afford to go out, whether it's the current circumstances of the world or just maybe you're like us and you're like, oh my gosh, we are living in infant and toddlerville and we don't want to pay a sitter, $100 for the evening and all the work that it takes to, prep for that and everything. I understand. You can stay at home and still have amazing date nights. You can still rent a movie. We just, aren't headed out to Blockbuster. Maybe you're headed to Redbox or you buy one on TV. Look it, we can be hip and cool. You snuggle up on the couch together. Maybe you cook that dinner and eat it later. Just the two of you. Light some candles. Hold hands on the couch. When money was tight, sometimes it would be a walk. There's some great places just to hold hands and take a walk and enjoy conversation without anyone interrupting you. It doesn't have to be an expensive dinner, movie, dancing, all of that. And if you refocus and think about your friendship and you think about wanting to hang out with your best friend, you probably want to do something where you can talk, where you can connect, where you can just be together. I'm not a fan of other people saying, you have to go on a date night every week, the shoulding. I just don't get into any of that. If it works for you, for your finances, for your schedule, for your life to go out every week, do it. If you both want to do that, do it. We highly encourage it. However, if that doesn't work for you, there's no should here. No matter what, get on the same page. Find what will work for you. And maybe it's every other week. Maybe it's once a month. Maybe there's a certain day of the week. It doesn't have to be on the weekends. Let me tell you, you can get into a restaurant much easier on a Tuesday night. Maybe that's what you need to do. It doesn't have to be out on the weekend. Find what works for you and then commit to that. Commit to it for the next year. Commit to it for 2021. Have some grace with yourself. It's not about perfection. It's about just showing up and saying, hey, this year has been wonky. We were dating every week until March. It's been sporadic since then, but let me tell you, those date nights went back to cuddling up on the couch together, sitting together after the kids had finished eating and talking. It's not always about going out. It's about hanging out with your best friend. I hope this sparks some conversation between you and your spouse. And maybe you're not married and you're dating, and it also can spark that conversation. You might still be in that dating world, and you can talk about what would we like this to be when we're married. What would we like this to look like in a year from now? What would we like our dating life to be? Envision together, dream together. Talk about it. That's what friends do. They talk about it. I hope that this whole series has given you some food for thought, some things to talk about with your spouse, some things for you to think about for yourself. I have truly enjoyed sharing about marriage. It's one of those things that I probably could talk about all the time. It's why I actually wanted to devote 1 month here on the podcast just talking about marriage. But like I said, if you want to listen to more and you haven't checked out episodes 23 and 24, you can hear my husband's perspective. I really think it's so valuable to bring him into that conversation because he thinks about things differently. He sees things differently, and I love that. All right, here's to you. Here's to your marriage and your friendship with your spouse. All right, ladies, until next week.